So what inspired me, or rather what set me off to write this paper, was an article that I read, a version of which showed up pretty much everywhere in the news at the very end of this past August, just about a month ago. The article was about Elon Musk, technology entrepreneur, tech guru, CEO of Tesla, you know, the innovative electric car company that is really the only manufacturer ever to take on the powerful cabal of existing automobile manufacturers and oil companies. The CEO and chief technology officer of SpaceX. And I don't know, maybe I should add raging pothead. The article was all about his new startup, Neuralink, and their new product. The product was a pig called Gertrude with a coin-sized computer chip in her brain to demonstrate his ambitious plans to create a working brain-to-machine interface. Now, to be clear here, the product isn't the pig, it's the chip. And the chip and plans for it are a work in progress. So there's really no there yet anyway. He's working on it. But what exactly is he working on? What is this brain-to-machine interface? What is it for? According to an article in CNET, that's their logo, that's shorthand for computer network. And according to Musk, this brain-computer link technology is like a Fitbit for your skull. Now, you all know what a Fitbit is, right? Consumer technology product that you use to track your activity, exercise, food, weight, sleep, in order to help you stay motivated and improve your health. But why would you need a Fitbit for your skull? Let's dig a little bit deeper into that skull, shall we? During the press conference at which Musk introduced Gertrude, he demonstrated his second-generation Neuralink computing device, which showed on a screen the pig's brain activity as it snuffled around the pen on the stage. And he explained how this second-generation implant is, and I quote, more compact and fits into a small cavity hollowed out into the skull. Tiny electrode threads penetrate the outer surface of the brain, detecting an electrical impulse from nerve cells that show the brain at work. In line with Neuralink's longer-term plans, the threads are designed to communicate back with computer-generated signals of their own. Okay, of course, but for what purpose? To what ends? Well, of course, it gets worse. And with respect to just how much worse it gets, I have to quote from Musk himself a bit more completely. I need you to hear it from the source's mouth. So according to Musk, and again, I quote, Neuralink has a medical focus to start, like helping people deal with brain and spinal cord injuries or congenital defects. The technology could, for example, help paraplegics who've lost the ability to move or sense because of spinal cord injury. And the first human uses will aim to improve conditions like paraplegia or tetraplegia. But wait, there's more. Musk's vision is far more radical, including ideas like conceptual telepathy, where two people can communicate electronically by thinking at each other instead of writing or speaking. The long-term goal is to head off a future where artificial intelligence, vastly smarter than humans, exterminates us. Let's quote. He also envisions a future wherein people will use Neuralink to connect to their own digital AI incarnations so that, in his words, and again I quote, the future is controlled by the combined will of the people of Earth. It's going to be important from an existential threat perspective to achieve a good AI symbiosis. So I know, at this point you're probably thinking, pass that hash pipe, Elon. But he's serious. He has always been serious. Think about all of those Tesla cars all over this planet and the one in space. And think about his SpaceX achievements, while Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson are mostly just still playing with their rockets and their other little space toys. The core of Musk's more off-the-rails sounding ideas, though, are about saving us, that this is a good thing, folks. There's nothing contradictory in or questionable about using a technological means to solve a human and a humane ends, that is to ensure the continued future and health and well-being of the species. And so, as I said, all of this is what set me off to write this paper, because in reading about his flight of ideas, about the possibilities of his Neuralink implant, and the fact that he's the kind of guy who just might bring them to fruition, I was taken back first. in my mind after I was taken aback and, after the chills stopped running up and down my spine, to a lesson that I learned from my great teacher and mentor and the great general semanticist, Neil Postman. Neil gave on a number of occasions a wonderful talk, typically entitled 5 Things We Need to Know About Technological Change. Sometimes it was 6 things. And I was in the audience on at least 2 occasions when he gave this talk, but in every version of it, the first point that he makes is the following: all technological change is a trade-off. It is, as he liked to say, a Faustian bargain. It giveth and it taketh away. What this means is that for every advantage a new technology offers, there's always a corresponding disadvantage, and that the disadvantage may exceed in importance the advantage, or the advantage may well be worth the cost. Well, thinking about this for this occasion, it dawned on me that the Faustian bargain is an example of what we in general semantics refer to when we start talking about a two-value orientation. The invention is going to give us something we consider progress. It's going to solve a problem, make something easier to do or to achieve, make it more efficient or effective, make our lives better. On the other hand, we're going to lose something greatly and gravely change something in the process that is dear and important to us. One of Neil's most important lessons from the 20th century is the nail that television drove into the coffin of print literate culture as the technological development that finally and fully delivered us to a post-literate age. One of the lessons that Siva Vaidhyanathan would have driven home for us had he given his AKML address last night is that our so-called social media are helping to turn us into anti-social beings. But hold on. This Faustian bargain doesn't sound like either or thinking. It sounds like both and thinking. The innovation or innovations will both giveth and taketh away. Well, this is the notion that I want to problematize here and that I want us to think about in these few more minutes that I have. I want to argue that this is certainly not a both-and bargain. And it's a work in progress, so we can maybe talk about this after I finish. Let me use 2 other examples besides the Neuralink implant to help me make my point. The first is an RF chip, a radio frequency chip for cats and dogs. For the greater part of this century, adoption agencies, veterinary clinics have recommended RF implants in dogs and cats, just in case your pet runs away or gets, dog napped or kidnapped. The RF chip contains a GPS locator device that will help you track them down and find them. Great, right? So I talk with my students about this. I talk about how, back during the summer when I was 10 years old, we would get on our bikes and ride to a reservoir where we'd found this wrecked and really leaky rowboat. We'd float around like Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer all day, eat our lunch while we were bailing out the boat. And, then we'd ride home in time for dinner. And our mothers had no idea where we were or what we were doing. So compare this to my students whose parents bought them a cell phone as soon as they thought their son or daughter would be responsible enough not to lose it or to break it, as this kind of tetherless tether to keep track of them at all times. And I also talk with them about how when, my children were young just a few years back, we had already entered into an age of supervised play dates, right? Because of normal parental concerns, but also because of more extreme anxieties like, the possibilities of child abduction. And so I asked my students, if you decide with or without a partner to have children someday, will you implant in their necks an RF chip? No? Well, why not? I follow this up with a second example. I ask my students how many of them have an Apple Watch. I can ask you the same. And then I ask, why do you have one? Well, so the answer is often that, it's cool. Some students even admit that it's something of a status symbol, just like expensive wristwatches have always been a show-offy kind of thing. Some students will talk about how useful it is in all of the ways it not only syncs with their phone and their Macintosh computer, but how in certain ways and for certain purposes, right, remember that Fitbit, it's actually better and more functional than their phones and their laptops. Well, I asked them why they think the Apple Watch became a successful product in Apple's product line. And their answers continue to be the same. So I drop the idea in their laps that not all consumer products catch on and become successful for the reasons that purchasers and users think they do. And likewise, they many times don't catch on and become successful for the reason the manufacturer intended And I asked, what's the idea behind the Apple Watch that most Apple Watch wearers are not aware of, and which the folks at Apple's Genius Bar probably, aren't themselves aware of? That when you have a miniature computer, a communication mobile internet device attached to your wrist, you can't leave it on the counter or on your night table at home. Follow this thinking a next step. Why not just implant it? This way, you'll never forget to put it on. It will be with you, in you, always. And so with these examples in mind, let me return to this idea of the Faustian bargain and a two-valued orientation. The Faustian bargain is not both-end thinking for two reasons. One is because it's a matter of polarization. It pushes things, it pushes us toward extremes. What will help human beings and humanity as a whole and how, but what will also inevitably hurt us and how. And the other reason that the bargain is not both end is the result of the binary nature of the choice. I'll say it this way. Do we accept both outcomes? Do we want both outcomes? Do we have a choice in the matter? The Neuralink chip is being developed by Elon Musk because he's an entrepreneur working in a technopolistic, progressively minded culture, developing products not simply with his own power and riches in mind, but because he can, and because he himself is a celebrant of and a wholesale believer in the power and benefits of technologies like the ones that he conjures up and develops for us. In other words, if we want the one good and happy consequence, but not the other, we need to remember that we have no skin in this game, that there's no agency in it for us. We have no choice. The both for us is both forced and enforced. What this change in the natural order of things, this alteration to the fabric that we humans weave in time and space is going to bring. It will bring these things because of the agency of companies and forces and people we cannot stop. Many of whom, by the way, are more frightening and more blinded by their gadgetry than Musk will ever be. Again, it's unfortunate that Siva wasn't here last night to talk about the Frankenstein monster that Mark Zuckerberg created, which he no longer understands and which is now so very far out of his control. I'm reminded of the words of Samuel Findlay, I can say his name, Samuel Findlay Breese Morse. When he first tested his telegraph, his first message was, "What hath God wrought?" God, huh? People bring things into the world, and they will continue to bring these things, whether we want them or whether we need them, or whether we ought to birth them into the natural order of things. Thanks.